Hey guys, welcome back to the Blue Podcast with me, Tom. Today we got Heli and Lloyd as my co-hosts today. How are you guys doing?
Brilliant. Excited.
Yeah, feeling good.
And today we've got a guest I've wanted to have on for a while. Someone that I'm very excited to introduce. We've got Gary Taphouse. How you doing, mate?
Hi, yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Excited for the podcast. Just before we get into it, do you want to just explain what it is you do for our audience?
Sure, yes. So, football commentator for Sky Sports since 2005. Although back then I didn't do a lot because I was very new and very young and not very good. But yeah, sort of from around 2010 onwards, started working very regularly on match choice for the 3 o'clock Saturday games in the Premier League. And then in the Champions League when Sky had the rights. And then I've gradually started doing live EFL, live WSL, Africa Cup of Nations when that comes around. And I do about 130 games a season now. So it's full-on, full-time job.
Wow. Yeah, I think some people probably don't appreciate how much time you actually spend on as a commentator. You know, you've got your prep, you're actually being at the game, and then the amount of games you have to go and watch.
Yeah, but the question that I'm asked the most, and the question that my wife is asked the most is, so your husband's a football commentator, so he does a game on a Saturday. What does he do the rest of the week? And that's not how it works, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, otherwise I wouldn't be able to pay the bills. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this week, for example, so Luton versus Crystal Palace for match choice on Saturday. Tuesday, I'm going to be going into a studio to do a UEFA Youth League game lunchtime, then straight to Sky Sports to do an EFL game on the Red Button. Then I'm driving straight to Ipswich to do the live EFL game on Wednesday night, Ipswich Millwall. Back down to London to do a Europa League game, Rangers, whoever they're playing, can't remember. And then back into the Premier League next weekend. So all this week, I will either be at a game, traveling to a game, staying in a hotel, or preparing for the next game. And the truth is 80% of my job is either spent sitting in front of this laptop preparing or sitting behind a wheel driving up the motorway. And the fun stuff, the actual commentating, probably is only about 10-20% of the job. So yeah, because you go wherever the OB is. You know, if I'm down to do the Wednesday night game and it's in Hull, then I've got to drive to Hull, and I live in Bournemouth. So, you know, It's not, you go where the game is. They don't choose it around you.
How many miles do you think you probably clock a week then? It must be a high number.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, Sky are brilliant on the travel front. They organise hire cars to be sent to my house and picked up again. And obviously they're all new cars, so I'm not driving my own car. But I mean, I probably do about 40,000, 50,000 miles a year, maybe more sometimes. And a lot of that is just going up and down the M3 to and from London. Where Sky are really good geographically is that obviously match choice, the way the rota's done is that it's much more done on geography. So I'll do the vast majority of the Bournemouth home games, Saturday 3 o'clock matches, which is great. I'll be there on Boxing Day against Fulham. I'll be there next weekend against Villa. So that's 2 miles from my house, so that's no problem at all. And with EFL, I'm doing a Southampton home game over Christmas. That's half an hour's drive. So, you know, they're sensible. But ultimately, as I say, if the game's in Hull and I'm down to do it, then I'll travel to Hull. Same with WSL. I've done 2 WSL games this season. They're both in Liverpool. So that's a long way.
It's a very long way.
Imagine the petrol bill.
Well, yeah. Thankfully, I don't have to pay it. But yeah.
Fair enough. This might be a bit of a difficult question for you, but is there a league or cup that you prefer commentating on?
Well, obviously they're all different.
That's why it might be quite a hard question.
Yeah, I mean, I love working on the Premier League because, you know, it is the elite league, and whenever you go to any Premier League game, regardless of what it is, you know, there's a huge amount of media there. We'll always have a minimum of 12 cameras, sometimes as many as 30. It feels like every game feels like an event. So that's special. I love the Championship because there's no VAR. That's the first thing. It makes, and not because I hate VAR. I don't. I'm not one of those people. But it does make commentating more complicated for a whole myriad of reasons. And if a goal goes in the Championship, then it's a goal. And if you call it and you go really big on it, it's not going to be disallowed for a hairline offside 3 minutes later. So there's a lot to be said for that. And obviously I love the unpredictability of the Championship and the competition of it, the passion. And actually WSL I enjoy as well because obviously it's exploded in the last few years. The new TV deal 3 years ago with the Sky and the BBC. Suddenly the attendances have gone through the roof. The viewing figures are really good. And it feels like that's really taking off, and it's great to be there as that's happening. So I've enjoyed that too, and the access is amazing there. Whereas obviously Premier League, it's the biggest league in the world, and access is a challenge sometimes. WSL is a totally different world, so it's really nice to sort of sit and chat to every manager in the dugout before a game at that level. It's brilliant. So every league is different, and every league has its own challenges. But I'm very lucky that I do a huge variety of games at Sky. I'm not just on one division. So, and long may it stay that way because I really enjoy it.
Can you hear the referees through the VAR process, or is it just the screen?
No, we can't. How it works is we can hear the VAR. They have to flick a switch so we can hear it. And most of the time, what we hear is just doing a comms check to the referee. That's all we hear. And so that'll constantly be happening every few minutes. And then when there's an incident, that we'll hear the VAR say, just hold the play while we're checking. And then,
so nothing that will get them in trouble or anything like that. Nothing controversial.
No, absolutely not. Well, I think they're very careful what they say because they know other people are listening. But where it helps is we obviously get an idea of where a decision is going before people in the ground and before the viewers. So we'll be able to hear the VAR say, recommending it's a penalty. And you'll see the referee doing this, and he's hearing what we're hearing, but we know what he's about to do. So we can either decide to sort of tee it up and say, well, I think this is going to be a penalty, guys. Or we can say, let's let the referee decide to make his decision, and we won't say anything. There's a decision to be made there, an editorial decision as much as anything. But it's good to be able to hear it. As I say, it's a technical issue. So sometimes the line goes down from Stockley Park, or it's a bit crackly. So it's not, it's not foolproof by any means. But on a day when it's working fine, we get a very good idea of where decisions are going. And it's worth remembering that for all the headlines VAR creates, most games, it really has very little impact in a game. You remember all the times it disallows goals or there's controversial moments, but as someone who commentates on at least one Premier League game a week, I can promise you, for the most part, I'm not even aware of it, other than the VAR saying comms check, because although they're checking everything, believe it or not, the standard of officiating in the Premier League is very, very good. And
is it?
It is because you remember the bad decisions. This is my point.
True.
And they, if you analyze a whole season of Premier League decisions, as the Premier League themselves do, 98.2% of decisions last season were correct. But obviously that 1.8% of decisions which were wrong are the ones you remember. And so actually VAR doesn't have to do a lot of correcting unless it is a really, really massive howler. And a lot of the time, a whole game will pass and VAR will have had no intervention whatsoever. On another day, you might have a game where, it's checking everything and everything is very close. There are loads of tight offsides. There's a dubious handball. Should it be given or not? And it can have a massive impact in the game and you'll have 15 minutes of stoppage time. But actually, that is quite rare.
It does sound like you're describing a bit of Chelsea versus Spurs a couple of weeks ago. On the hearing the VAR decisions and that kind of 1.8%, what's it like commentating when, in your opinion, I don't know if this has happened to you yet, but in your opinion, the decision from the VAR is wrong. How do you go about commentating that?
Well, it's not for me to say that it's wrong, because the laws of the game are actually much more complicated than many of us appreciate. And I think even those of us that work in the sport still have doubts as to what a handball actually is these days.
Yeah.
Because the rules have changed very discreetly and subtly many times. So, there has to be a certain amount of trust in the officials who it's their job to know this stuff. So I haven't really had too many occasions where I've thought, well, that's just totally wrong. There was one where I remember when, I think it was Brighton against Everton, and a penalty was given because Michael Keane trod on someone's foot. And the view from the media afterwards at the game was like, that's just ridiculous, because it was totally accidental. If you're the striker and you're about to take a shot, then someone treads on your foot and it hurts like hell and you can't take the shot, then you think it's a foul. And I think that was one that later on they said, no, that shouldn't have been given. But it wasn't like a massive howler at the time. We didn't think, wow, that's going to create headlines. It didn't really. It was, he trod on his foot and it could easily have been given as a foul outside the box and no one would have said anything. But because it was a penalty, it created a bit more of a fervour. And as you know, there have been plenty of apologies. But as I say, when you add it all up and the sheer number of decisions that are made over the course of a season, and then compare it to the number of apologies that have had to be made, it's a tiny number. And I'm not an apologist for referees either, by the way, but it's a job. And as I've been an assistant referee at one of my son's games, and it's really hard.
It's very hard.
Oh, the Sunday League refereeing job. I never want to do it again.
The pressure, even at that level, is intense. And I'm talking about under 12s. There was a guy running through. It wasn't even for my son's team, actually. It was for the opposition. And I'm like, this is a really close offside. Do I put my flag up or not? And I've got the opposition parent standing right behind me. So now you imagine that pressure multiplied by 100 in a Premier League stadium in front of 60,000 people. That is not easy. And I think, sometimes it's really good to stop being a fan for a minute and put yourself in that position. And it's difficult when, during the heat of the game. But maybe sometimes we just need to put ourselves in their shoes.
Does your job actually stop you becoming a fan more? Does it take away the fan aspect because you're more professional in your job?
When you're working, yes. I mean, I do commentate on my own team, which I shan't mention. But yeah, the funny thing is when we're all football fans before we go into football media. And I would follow my team home and away when I was your age, religiously, with a religious fervour. And I would take my mates in the car and we'd go up and down the country and have a fantastic time. And then, of course, you go into football media and suddenly all the times you would be watching your own team, you're suddenly working and you can't watch them. So it's like a horrible irony of working in football is you don't get to watch your own team. So my producer's brilliant. And he said, if there's an occasion where I can get you to see your team, I'll stick you on there. And that's an occasion when I can actually watch my own team. And obviously when Carabao Cup comes along, I might be able to sneakily take my two boys to go and watch them. But yeah, it's a sad reality of working in football that you don't get to see the team that got you that passion for football in the first place. But yeah, when I'm commentating on them, it's like footballers say, I used to play for them and I've supported them all my life. When I crossed the white line for that 90 minutes, I'm no longer interested. And that's how I am when I commentate on my own team and all the other commentators. Once you've got the headphones on and you're holding the microphone and the game's begun, you're not a fan. You can't be. And if I showed even the slightest bit of bias, I wouldn't be doing them again. So I'd be cutting my nose to spite my face. So no, there's no hint of being a fan or already. And in fact, if anything, you might go the other way and be a bit more critical. of your own team. And I've had on Twitter people who are fellow fans of the club I support telling me, you obviously hate this team because you're so biased against it. That hurts. I can take pretty much any criticism on social media, but that one does hurt.
Plastic fan call outs.
But then again, if you are doing that, it sort of must mean to you that you're doing a good job because you're being that unbiased at your job. So I guess you could sort of take it that way. Maybe
I've gone a bit too far the other way. You know, I've been overcritical because it's my team. I haven't done it knowingly. It's not a conscious bias by any means. But I like to think that once the game starts, I'm not biased in any way.
Yeah.
And the fact that I've done, well, I think Sky have sent me to over 100 games with my team, and I don't think anyone's ever called me out on it. So that should tell you. And some of the other commentators are actually openly supportive of clubs and still get to commentate on them, and no one seems to really complain.
Carragher and Neville, that's what it is.
Well, yeah, I mean they're obvious ones.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, I won't name names, but we all know there are commentators out there who have been very, very open about who they support. To me, that's a risky game because you know, you are asking for someone to say, "Well, you're being biased." You know, we're all professionals. We're not going to do that, but yeah, I wouldn't do it.
Fair enough. You've got some behind-the-scenes pictures, if I'm not mistaken. Would we be able to see what kind of you see during a game?
This, for example, is our position at Stamford Bridge. This was a Chelsea game I did earlier this season.
What a view.
Yeah, so it's high. It's very, very high. That perhaps doesn't give you an idea of just how high it is. But trust me, it's high. And the Chelsea TV guys are actually 2 rows further up than us there.
Really?
Yeah, so they are super high. You can definitely hear Jason Cundy even with headphones on. So the monitor on the left, I think this is literally the teams are arriving at this moment, which is why it's a slightly odd shot. But that will be what the director is showing to the rest of the VOB, the outside broadcast. The one on the right is what Premier League productions are sending to 202 countries. So that will have graphics on. So the score bar and subs and little bits of stats here and there. And the one in the middle is the VAR screen. So that's what the VAR is seeing at Stockley Park. So you've got 3 different viewpoints throughout the game. And obviously, you can see the headphones there. We're both wearing them. The director is talking to us throughout the game, and not just us. We're hearing him talk to everyone on the OB. So all the camera operators, all of the replay people, and commentators as well. So you've got to kind of zone out of the stuff that isn't relevant to you. You know, if he's telling a camera to go to a shot of someone in the crowd, you've just got to ignore it because it's so easy to be distracted by what you're hearing. People don't realize that there's people talking in our ears all the time. It's not just the crowd noise we're hearing. And if he needs us to really listen, then he'll say our names. Like commentators, we're going to show a replay of that penalty incident next play, and then I can lead into it. So when you first do a TV game, and I came from a radio background, it is a huge, huge shock that you are just being spoken to all the time, and you've got to ignore it. You've got to listen, but obviously ignore it. And we've got you see the Glen Sound mixer in the middle. That there's a button that you can press there, which we call the lazy, which allows you to talk to the director without it going on air. And then when you release the button, you're back talking on air again. Okay. You might want to get a shot of the opposition manager so you can, mention a stat, or you might want a replay of a particular instant again. So you can request that using the lazy button, and then you're back on air, and then you can lead into it. And it all sounds smooth and planned. If you are trying to tell a story, you've got to remember everyone watching can see the pictures. They can see the game happening. So you're trying to add value, not just tell people what they already know, what they can already see, but you're trying to add to the pictures, basically. That's the job of a commentator.
I see.
So you're constantly telling stories. I can show you a couple of other commentary positions actually. I hope. Maybe I can't. This is the VAR screen. So this was a Palace game, and you see number 22. That's Odsonne Edouard, who scored, and this was disallowed for offside. So this was
so tight.
I know this is one of those where the lines had to be drawn, and we had a long wait. And I think it came down from the line came down from his right armpit. And it's one of those interminable waits, and it was given as offside. But so that's what we see on our middle monitors.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the position at Wembley, and again, that doesn't really do justice to how high you are and how far away you are. You see how little those people look.
Yeah,
if you imagine a goal-mouth scramble. That's you need good vision. I with my contacts in, I've got 20/20 vision. If you start to get a bit older and your eyesight's going, then you're going to struggle at some of these grounds, honestly.
How can you tell who's who from that distance?
You get to know what players look like, and someone like Jack Grealish will have his socks rolled down.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. You get to know what players look like very quickly. This is Swansea a few years ago, and you can see there was a problem here. And you don't have to look too hard. We couldn't see one of the goals, so yeah, we had to sort of fight quite hard to get this moved. And this was quite close to kickoff. We suddenly realised we went up to get the gantry and couldn't see the goal, and there were 2 goals in that at that end in the first 10 minutes. So
yeah, wait, is this? This isn't Swansea Man City, is it?
I couldn't tell you. I don't think so. This is quite old because you can see Motti on the screen there. Bless him, God rest his soul. Who I ended up being on the gantry with 100 times.
Wow,
which was fantastic. I got to know him really well, and he was about to do a piece there into Football Focus, which is why it wasn't ideal that I needed our commentary position moving because everyone was focused on that. But yeah, I've got a couple of others here. So this is Watford. Vicarage Road, great ground to work at because you can see it's totally unimpeded. It's just one of those grounds I really enjoy because it's always a good atmosphere. It's a sort of old school ground in many ways.
Yeah, nice little stadium.
Yeah, it is. I personally really prefer the older grounds. They just, and I'm not saying that new stadiums are bad. They're not. And many of them are great to work in because they've been designed with TV in mind. But there's just something special about some of the older grounds for sure. This is one that, speaking of new stadiums.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, you can see West Ham is not ideal. Look how far back that is.
Yeah.
Wow.
And again, perhaps the photo doesn't quite do it justice.
You're basically in West London at that point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There are times where it's actually might be easier to commentate off that bottom left screen.
Yeah.
Because you are a long, long way away for sure. But yeah, so that's an interesting one to say the least. But that just gives you an idea of the sort of positions that we get. And obviously, there are some games where we'll be commentating in the studio. About half the games I do in a season will actually be off a TV screen in a studio somewhere for various reasons. Not Premier League, obviously. That's all done on site. Most of the EFL is as well. But there are world feeds involving the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup or Europa League, even Champions League, where they're done in the studio and you're just watching the screen. So you're just watching what everyone else is seeing.
Fair enough. Now, this is going to seem to our audience like a very odd question, but obviously, once you're up there in the gantry, you can't really leave now, can you?
Really? You're not allowed to leave at all?
Well, it depends. If you're on a suspended gantry in front of a stand, sometimes it may be a ladder that comes down, and for health and safety reasons, they can't put the ladder down during the game. So once you go up at 2:00, you can't then leave until 5:00.
Oh my God. Brilliant.
So to preempt your question, Tom,
I think you know where I'm going with this, don't you?
You have to be quite tactical with making sure you go to the gents at the right time, because some people aren't prepared for that. And I remember once being at Birmingham, and that's a good example. St Andrews is an example of where a ladder comes down, and for health and safety reasons, it goes up at 2:30, and it won't come down again until the end of the game, and not even right at the end of the game, until those fans at the bottom of the ladder have gone. Excuse me. So, yeah, I was up there doing Birmingham-Chelsea, and at the time, Canal Plus in France had the rights to the Premier League, and they had some French commentators up there. And at half time, the commentator came over and said, excuse me, where do we go to the toilet? And I said, you can't, sorry. You've got to wait till full time. And he was absolutely horrified. And then we looked over, and the next thing, he's just weeing into an Evian bottle. So
Fair enough.
the glamour of television right there.
That's crazy. That is mental.
Yeah.
Mad. So yeah, no, there have been once or twice where it's definitely been cutting it fine. Let's say that. And I've even heard stories of commentators buying adult nappies just in case.
Wow.
Oh my!
I haven't, but I think it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Particularly bear
fair.
in mind if you've got to interview the managers after, you know, complete the sentence yourself.
Fair enough. I think we'll leave that off the podcast. Just a last little thing to touch on. Obviously, you've got Palace Luton coming up soon. How much work do you actually have to put in before that, just for our audience?
Yeah,
It's a lot.
It does vary because you want to be fully prepared. Equally, there are some teams that really well. And you maybe have to do less work than others. And for most Premier League games, I'll do 6 to 8 hours of prep before a game, and that will be more than enough. Now, if it's a League Two game and it's sides I haven't seen that often, then obviously a lot more. And if it's teams you're unfamiliar with, then you might have to put in a day and a half. So it does vary. But yeah, I mean, the day before a game, it'll be a minimum of 6 hours, and sometimes more. And I can show. Thankfully, Sky are brilliant, and we have a team of absolutely amazing statisticians who work really hard to help us with all this. And we do get. I'll show you an example of a sort of stat pack we get, which gives you an idea of how much help's involved. And these guys are working day and night to cover every live game on Sky Sports. So this document is how many? 28 pages, I think. But it's head-to-head record between the sides, a bit about Luton, what they've done this season, right down to this next table. You can see goals from corners. They've only managed one all season, so that's something to throw in maybe when they get their first corner. Here comes they've only scored once from the corner all season, so maybe they'll feel they'll do another, something like that. And the guys will highlight in yellow anything that's particularly interesting. So top right there, no clean sheets this season.
Yeah.
So at some stage that's going to change. So it's all really, really useful stuff. And it's about me deciding what of this is important. What do I actually need to know? And I will condense this into one side of A4, and then I'll have another side of A4 for the players. So I'll just show you what it looks like for the players. Bear with me. Are you still seeing the same document?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I can show you something else. So then every player has their own. So yeah, I mean, this is obviously invaluable, and it helps us an enormous amount. So we owe these guys an awful lot.
Yeah.
Particularly when it's teams you don't know. This is obviously hugely valuable, and it allows us the time to then watch footage and actually get to know what the players look like and where they play and what sort of type of players they are. This statistical work is all done for us. But it's worth remembering that everyone on the OB, the presenter, the guest, the reporter, the co-coms, they'll all see this as well. So it's good as a commentator to actually have other stuff which isn't in this, which is why it's good to talk to the managers involved and just have a few lines that everyone else doesn't have,
Yeah.
So that you're not just repeating things that the presenter might say before the game.
You've seen like the people see on social media sometimes the books that some commentators have with the notes just absolutely covering the pages. Is that something you do as well?
Yeah, so I don't write like some of them do. I don't trust my own handwriting. I type everything and print it off. But yeah, like I say, I've got the left-hand side bullet points for the teams and the managers, and on the right-hand side, a grid with all the players' info in. And I have about 22 bits of information on every player, and 90% of it you'll never use, but you need to have it just in case. Just in case a reserve left back comes on and scores a 35-yard worldie, he might not have scored for 7 years, you know? So you need to know that. And if the likelihood is he won't, but you've just got to be prepared for every eventuality.
Fair enough. And I think that is a good way to wrap up the podcast. Thank you very much, Gary. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers, Heli and Lloyd.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, really interesting talk.
Any last pieces before we finish?
Oh, yeah, all good. Just wondering, as Gary's had a background in radio and TV, which does he, in radio, which do you prefer doing?
I do love radio, Lloyd, I've got to say, and I have many years doing it, and I really, really enjoyed it. The sad truth is there's more money in TV. So,
yeah.
So in terms of paying my mortgage, I'll have to say TV. You get to have a lot more sort of banter with the co-com and the presenter on radio. You can go off piece to a bit more, TV is a lot drier, I think particularly when you're going around the world, you don't want to be cracking jokes. It's not what the overseas audience demands. So, yeah, they've both got their advantages. And I think bringing a game to a worldwide TV audience is brilliant.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much, guys, for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do leave a like. Subscribe if you're new around here, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.